Moving to Edo State, the killing of 16 northern travelers in Uromi, Edo State, set ablaze by a mob, has sparked nationwide outrage, with President Bola Tinubu and the Edo governor Monday Okpebholo ordering a full investigation. The victims, identified as hunters traveling for Sallah, were reportedly stopped by local security operatives accused of being kidnappers after dane guns were found in their vehicle. Now, here's what you need to know. The mob attack happened on March 28, 2025 in Uromi, Edo State, where the traveling northerners were suspected of being kidnappers and then set ablaze with tires. Authorities have arrested about 14 suspects in connection with the killings and are conducting an ongoing investigation to apprehend others involved. The Edo State Governor Monday Okpebholo condemned the act, suspending the local authority chief and banning unauthorized vigilante groups to prevent future incidents. We're now joined this morning by legal practitioner Liborous Oshoma. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, good morning.
It's just a sad...
Just that you need to add, that Uromi is very close to my village. It's just about 20 minutes from my village.
Oh, wow. Where are you from?
I'm from Okpebholo.
Oh, Okpebholo. You definitely know of Okpebholo. And it's a sad conversation to start our Monday with. But we can't deny the fact that while some people are celebrating Eid, there are others who should have been celebrating Eid, whose lives were unfortunately cut short. But let's talk about, before we get into the story proper, I saw a video online of somebody complaining about killings in Uromi and complaining about how they had been attacked. Since it's 20 minutes from your village, I don't know if you have an idea about the history of security or lack of it in Uromi.
Yeah, thank you. First and foremost, my condolence to, the families that have lost them, these loved ones. Secondly, and to the families that have lost people one way or the other in Edo State and Nigeria. This also for me should, create an opportunity for us to start that conversation again. We have abandoned it, we have left it, we just treat it in isolation. The position of insecurity in Nigeria is a menace that we run away from until issues like this happen. And then we begin to, look for how to deal with it in isolation and then leave the bigger problems. If you as a journalist, you would have been inundated with the border insecurity happening around Edo State over time now. And before the election, there was the previous administration had, what you call a local vigilante group, which was suspended by the IG just before the election. And so when this governor came, the anti-kidnapping law was amended, and then the Edo State Security Corps was created with a commander. And so you had some vigilante groups who, because of the insecurity, so you had communities who had empowered their own vigilante group.
Self-help.
Self-help. Distinct from the government vigilante group, because this government is barely 4 months, and so they are trying to, in finding their feet, you can give it to them. Edo State, the metropolitan is relatively very safe now, unlike the court activities that we had at insecurity, kidnapping, to the extent that the former PDP state chairman was kidnapped, right on his way, out of government house after a meeting, and it was so bad. You remember how she had always been in the news for insecurity. Uromi, this same Uromi, 2024, last year, armed robbers attacked Uromi, robbed banks, even a soldier was killed, and, so it's always been, but recently the metropolis had been relatively safe, but the insecurity had been around the borders. And so communities around the borders, like Okpebholo, Uromi, Okpebholo is in the north. It borders Kokene and Edo. That's Kogi and Edo. And then you have other communities, Lankpes, Igara, Ibilo, from Ondo, Aziz. And then you have Benin, or Okada or Fosu, from same Ondo, Aziz. So the western side of it had been relatively, calm and peaceful. The north and the south, which is Uromi now, had been a hotbed for kidnappers, especially that Benin Auchi Road. The forest had, been, a very dangerous area. So this is the challenges that they are dealing with, that the communities are dealing with, that the state is dealing with. And then now this happened. And from the stories, the allegation that these persons were traveling and that the vigilante got tips that some persons were traveling with guns. And so, when they stopped them, they accosted them, and then in the heat of argument, one of the vigilante members stabbed one of the travelers stabbed a member of the vigilante. And so whatever that now led to whatever happened. But I would say that the killing is not commensurate to the stab, so we should condemn that you cannot, even though provocation is a defense in law, but you cannot compare killing and a stab.
Especially with the gruesome with
yes,
that killing.
with which. But then the question also now remains that we agree that police are empowered to license, light arms. But this licensing of arms, even for hunting, what's the parameters, what's radius can you carry that arm? If your arm is licensed in...
the geographical...
Yes. If your arm is licensed in Edo State, for example, in Uromi, can you take it to Benin? The answer is no. So if you have a licensed firearm, light gun from Kano, can you take it to go hunt in Port Harcourt? And that's why I say that the question, the issues, the discussion. So what I think the federal government can do, let's use this to kickstart a conversation on the state of emergency, on insecurity in Nigeria as a whole, using this as a case study. And then, people now, a lot of people are angry. Some persons in the north are asking questions. Oh, look, this should not be allowed to go unpunished. Those in the south are saying, look, this had happened. The president had ordered, a manhunt for the killers. But it is not just enough to order a manhunt for the killers. There's also a need to actually conduct a forensic investigation as to why were these people carrying arms and where were they coming from. Do you hunt in Port Harcourt? Port Harcourt is known for fishing, and then the other cases of killings and kidnappings that had happened that were unresolved. Some persons, talked about the case of Deborah in the north, and no arrest was made till date, and the matter just died. Some persons, you remember recently, 2023, 2024 was a challenging time for the Catholic Church in Auchi, to the extent that the bishop led a protest over kidnapping in that area. Reverend fathers were kidnapped and killed. And, so these are questions.
So we understand the background, and thank you for laying that background so people understand what's been going on in that area for quite some time. Now, let's look at the government's response, both from the federal and the state level. I mean, is it a little bit too little or too late to kickstart this response? Typical response: we condemn this, we'll set up a high panel to investigate this, and then we move on until the next incident. How do we draw the line and say, look, it stops here? Because loss of life is very tragic, one loss of life, and then to have 16, and you also mentioned the background that it didn't just happen in Edo State. We've also seen cases of jungle justice in the past. And the police response time, I mean, it takes some time to kill those numbers of people. Why? Where were they?
Yeah, first and foremost, let me start from the state vigilante, the local vigilante that are illegal, as pronounced by the state government, and the reason for these vigilantes, and then police. I'll start from the last. Policing in Nigeria, of 300 and something thousand policemen, I don't think we have up to 80-something thousand policing you and I. About 200 and something thousand are policing politically exposed people, rich men, MDs, Yahoo boys that can afford it. It's a notorious fact. Go to National Assembly today, you see the number of policemen, or just go to a high-profile burial and see the number of policemen that will escort dignitaries to that event. And that's the reason, because there's a shortfall in the number of policing. So people now have to resort to self-help. Creating, in every community, if you go to your community now, you'll be shocked. that if you attend your village meetings, you'll be shocked that there is a vote contribution meant to protect the community, to empower local vigilantes, not known to the states. In those communities, everybody is doing it now because of these challenges. It was never so. And then now, you have a state vigilante corps with command and control structure. If this local
similar
vigilante...
to Amotekun,
yes, similar to Amotekun. So what, with this, that's why I said, it's a whole big conversation that we should start. What the South states should do or can do now is to find a way to come together and create that kind of security network similar to Amotekun, recognized. You remember even when Amotekun was created, that battle of should they bear arms, should they not bear arms, and yet they want to fight people who are bearing arms. And so you need to have that conversation. So they had command and control structure. So if these vigilantes were part of the state's security corps, probably they would have called the sector commander, who would now maybe probably radio Benin to ask for backup and then move everybody to their station for interrogation. And that interrogation would have revealed a whole lot, maybe. And then you profile them and also probably take their biometrics.
I mean, even the state that has a right to take lives, it goes through
a process, yes. But because, and that's why I like the fact that the government immediately responded. It happened on Thursday. By Friday morning, the governor and his entire team has visited the place. So I would say, I would sit down here and condemn them and say, no, kudos to them. But also, that's why I told you, it's a whole lot of conversation. How much can a governor do when he does not control the police? All they have is their local vigilante.
Chief Security Officer in
name. So this is where the challenge is, really. So now we are creating states are creating local vigilante, and yet we don't want to discuss state policing. But because whether you like it or not, state vigilantes are indirect state policing.
Right.
So whether you like it or not. So all of these are issues we now need to. So, but also the statement is like, oh, go fish out the perpetrators, make sure they are brought to book. It's as fantastic as such statements are. We need to take it a notch further. Why is it a recurring decimal in Nigeria?
Exactly what I was going to ask. That was going to be my next question. Because at the end of the day, we can't talk about the fact that, or we can't ignore the fact that we've had a challenge in some scenarios with mobbing, people who will just gather, jungle justice, mob people. You mentioned Deborah Samuel. Deborah happened in 2012. There's David Imo that was mobbed in Lekki for 100 naira.
Alufo
was 2012. It's Deborah that was 2022. We made a lot of noise about these things. But why do we still find that people can lynch people, mob them, kill them, and it feels like nothing will happen?
Here we say the windmill of justice grinds slowly but surely. But we forget that justice delayed is justice denied. So when a people don't have a sense of justice, they take the laws into their hands. But when there is justice, you cannot talk about justice without talking about equality. When it happens here, we romanticize it and then just window dress it. But when it happens in this other place, there's swift response, there's action, fire for fire, look for the killers. So people are going to sit down and watch this thing. They say, how do you put it now? I say justice delayed is a mob prepared. Because at the end of the day, people are going to look at the issues and say, okay, when it happens to us, nobody comes to our rescue. So we're going to take the laws into our hands. That's why I would also call on government to ensure that irrespective of who is involved, irrespective of the person, irrespective of where it is happening from, the response should be the same measures. And so that's when the people have a sense of justice, a sense of equality, they are going to feel, oh yes, don't worry, government will take care of this. We trust that something will be done. And just the same way the governor has responded on this one, also we want to see that, wherever it happens, be it in the north, be it in the south, let government and governors in these places respond swiftly. And then, lastly on this issue, the government I have also listened to some persons issuing ultimatum to the president, and these things won't solve these problems. These are not the people saying, oh look, you must do this, otherwise in the north And then people are already reading tribes into these things.
Yeah, there's ethnic coloration.
Yes, ethnic coloration.
And religious coloration as well.
And typically, it is the Easterner, when you have these issues. I saw some posts, maybe it is the Igbos in Uromi. I asked myself, where's our humanity? People have died.
Tragic.
We feel bad that this thing has happened. No matter the excuse, it is not enough to take another life. But also, we also cannot shy away from the fact that we have a big challenge of insecurity in our hands. We also have a problem of education. How do we deal with it? How do we ensure that our people are educated and they are empowered so that tomorrow nobody would, feel the need to even take up arms against another person, or to say, oh, look, I want to protect myself, because you know that the state will always respond. But when the state, federal government in this case, for example, is foot dragging, we talk about police. If the police, we had enough policemen, do you think that we'll be discussing vigilante?
And that brings me to this question. People often resort to jungle justice because they don't even trust the police. I mean, if the police is there in the first place, it's one issue. Another is the trust deficit. They don't trust the police because many times they've seen robbers and people that are wanted get released after a few times. So they'll rather take justice into their hands, which is wrong. Where do we begin to fix the trust, and how do we deal with this issue of jungle justice holistically? And what happened to you mentioned humanity. Why is it easy for someone that just set out to go to work in the morning and then they're mobbing people regardless of their crime? Why is it easy for you to participate, an ordinary person on the face of it, in ending another man's life?
Yeah, because before the program I was talking about reorientation and this colonial mentality of segregation. I am bigger than yours. Mine is better than yours. I pass my neighbor. So that's the mentality that we all have. And so when you now couple with, delayed justice and then impunity on some part, I saw some videos where headsmen were uprooting people's cassava to feed to their cows. Do you know that sometimes if that happens to your farm, it might even kill you? So we also need to discuss the issue of ranching. That's somebody's business. One is cassava farm, is my business. You are ranching, is both is agriculture and farming. So why is one free to destroy mine, and then there are no consequences?
Back to the question of the police.
No, that's what I'm getting to. I'm just laying a foundation.
Oh, okay.
So why is one free to destroy mine and there are no consequences? Because of lack of consequences. Impunity, people now completely lost faith in the system. And coupled with the foundation I laid for you, I said, what's the number of policemen? When Uromi was attacked, a police station was attacked in Auchi. A police station was attacked by armed robbers, bombed down. What was the response? 3 banks were attacked simultaneously on that same day. What was the response? In Uromi too, a bank was attacked. What was the response from the police? So if these things happen and there is no response, because the police also are undermanned, so the people will look at themselves, how do we beef up security in this environment so that we can go to bed with our eyes closed? In my community, we've had to fight a tribal war. Till date, there are still youth leaders and boys who are empowered by the community to provide security. Otherwise, nobody will come home.
I mean, it's even unfortunate that in some communities there have been reports of them even paying these bandits to be able to...
So, in some of these cases, there are no police.
All right.
There are no police in some of these areas. So when go to the area command in Uromi, for example, what's the number of policemen on ground?
All right.
And then the few ones you have are busy arresting Okada riders and looking for Yahoo boys.
So there's definitely a flaw there.
There's a flaw. So
there's a conversation that needs to be had about community policing. Yeah. But I do want to go back to something you had mentioned earlier about reorientation, that there's a reorientation that needs to happen, which is what your response to his question was. And in terms of that reorientation, let's start here. what is the legal implication for people who participate in mob killings? So you see something like that happening, you participate in a mob killing, even though your answer is, oh, you suspected that the person is a kidnapper, you saw dane guns with them. What is the legal implication for participating in a mob killing? And what is the legal implication of being, you know, a suspect, a kidnapped suspect or a kidnapper?
Before I go into the legal implication, we all know the penalty for murder is death. Not even, you know, some as brazen as that, you know. And so the penalty is death. But also, the issues here are the fact that when we begin to talk about this mob killing, there's need for, I like the fact that the swift response and de-escalation of the matter. People should also be aware that when you begin to threaten people also, that, oh, because this has happened, and the state or the federal government has said, look, we're going to deal with it, would ensure that justice is served. And justice being served is that these people will be arrested and tried in a court of competent jurisdiction. And then government now takes steps to ensure that, you know, there are such consequences, there's no reoccurrence. But when you also now begin to make inciting statements and threaten others, what you also do is an offense also. Those are offenses also. And that you can be arrested for conduct likely to breach public peace,
and inciting,
for threat to life, and, you know, insurgency. So these are issues that people should understand, that all of these are offenses, and some even carry life imprisonment.
Just to mention, I mean, in addition to that, Sanusi has condemned people who potentially want to, you know, carry out reprisal attacks. CFN has spoken against it, saying that they condemn it.
That's what
do you fear that there might be reprisal attacks?
No, because the way the states and the federal government and the leaders, some, you know, notable leaders have handled the matter, I'm happy that, you know, they are de-escalating it.
But you can't assume that everybody is reasonable.
See, let me tell you. So, but also, our personal security should be our individual thing, and so people should, you know, be very vigilant out there. And then government at this stage, because we say there are no police to police us, we should also understand when you have, you know, such an incident, we shouldn't just limit it to the north and the south, or the north and Uromi, or Edo State and Kano. There are people who might feel emboldened to do the same thing if something is not done, if justice is not meted out. I will not sit down here and say because in Deborah's case, people were not arrested, and so in this case, people shouldn't be arrested. No, because if you do that, you will embolden some other persons tomorrow who would sit down and say, yes, they can even, you know, just carry out the act, and then, it becomes a free-for-all. So that's why I like the fact that, you know, everybody's condemning it, and the whole, a lot of both North and South are speaking with one voice on the matter. But it shouldn't end there with just condemnation. The opportunity had also presented himself now for the state to actually reorganize and restructure the security architecture, especially for the vigilante. And then the federal government should use this, if you want to call it a reconciliation or what do you call it now, a discussion, a national conference on insecurity, call it whatever you want to call it, but I think we talk too much. Now there are so many blueprints. There are so many blueprints on how we can actually decentralize. President Tinubu, when he was in opposition, some of their campaigns were, we need to decentralize security, we need to decentralize governance. So this is one way of decentralizing. That was why they created LASMA, and you find out that LASMA is even more effective than the federal agencies for managing traffic. In some cases, you hear road safety calling on LASMA to come to their rescue because they are on ground. You know, so in the same way, let the state use this as an opportunity to retool and restructure its security core, and let the federal government use this to have an extensive and robust discussion on declaring a state of emergency on insecurity in Nigeria, and then find lasting ways to solving it.
See that finding lasting ways, I think that's the most important part.
Yeah, if we if we discuss it at the local level,
on the issue, because we might move on to the next big discussion in the news cycle.
It's not something we should just discuss at the national level. We should discuss it at the local levels. Let it be a discussions from the local government. How do we ensure, every local government, how do we ensure that the communities are protected? And so when we have all of that, the people at the local government, because insecurity is local, the people at the local government level will be the one to come and tell you their challenges and how they feel it can be solved. And so once you do that, you would have taken, you know, a huge leap. And then lastly, the River Niger and River Benue. There's need for us to dredge those rivers. During Goodluck Jonathan's time, money was budgeted and it was whacked. If you do not dredge the River Niger and River Benue, any little rain or water, the rivers will overflow their banks, and people will chase people out of their farms. And once people are out of their farms and you stay for a few months and you can't feed, some will take to insecurity. Some become overnight vigilantes. So some of these persons are farmers. Some of them, their forests have been overflooded also. So there's need for us to look at some of these, you know, solutions.
We're about to get into the rainy season. So
exactly. So, I think, and then this movement of cows from all the way from the north to come graze, that will also empower, you know, opportunities for ranching.
It was a conversation that was had in the last administration, but I don't know how much light it saw.
The last administration did not have the conversation. What they did was trying to force, you know, what do you call it? No, they were trying to force, what did they even call that bill? You know, creating grazing routes.
Yes.
They were trying to force grazing routes on people. And grazing routes, those ones that you created before, are now people's farmlands and home and them ancestral farmland. So still going back to 1963 to say you want to create a part in my community. Yes. In 2024, 2023.
So that's
in my community. It's not an option.
Okay, in 30 seconds, is there an option for redress for the families of the victims?
Yes, certainly. I first and foremost, I think the state government should visit, extend the hand of fellowship, visit Kano. And then the families also, the Kano state government now would know how to deal with, you know, the families of these people. That way, you would have taken care, because some of these people are breadwinners, whether you like it or not, you know, you would have also, it shows sympathy from the states. And the federal government can set up a team to also visit their families. But don't ask me how many people have federal government visited, because it's always the case. That's why I talk about equality and justice. Equality and justice.
And should be your guiding principles all the time.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Liborous Oshoma, as always,
My
for
pleasure.
talking to us on Breakfast Central.
Thank you for joining us.